Turn with me, please, to the book of Ephesians. And note what is stated in Ephesians chapter 4, and we'll read verses 22 through 24. There it says, "You were taught to put away the old personality that conforms to your former course of conduct, and that is being corrupted according to its deceptive desires. And you should continue to be made new in your dominant mental attitude, and should put on the new personality that was created according to God's will in true righteousness and loyalty." So, like the first century Christians, you have come to know the truth about Jehovah. And the things you've learned has led you to become baptism candidates. Like all of God's people, you've done, as verse 22 states, to put away the old personality. But there in verse 23, we must also continue to be made new in our dominant mental attitude. This involves our thoughts, what we allow our mind to dwell on. Now, you know, the footnote for that verse indicates this term could also be rendered as the force actuating our mind, or literally translated to the spirit of your mind. In the English language, perhaps you've heard someone say that they are in good spirits, or you've heard someone described as being mean-spirited. Well, that's a description of one's dominant mental attitude, one's thoughts and motivations. It's what moves us to act the way that we do. Our goal as baptized servants of Jehovah is to gain a dominant mental attitude that aligns and is in harmony with God's thoughts. Now, that won't always be easy. It takes time and a lot of effort. Those who walk in the way of peace often encounter trials. And to stay on that road, we must be willing to make sacrifices.
Yes, Jehovah's Witnesses must be willing to make sacrifices. So says William Turner, who is a governing body helper. William is giving the final talk of the Saturday afternoon session of the 2022 convention. He has the theme, "Go on walking in the way of peace," and a baptism talk is intended to welcome new recruits. So this video will be being watched by millions of Jehovah's Witnesses around the world in their homes due to COVID and the fact that it was impractical to arrange large gatherings when the Pursue Peace Convention was first being planned. And individuals associated with Jehovah's Witnesses who've been studying with them for months, in some cases years, and who have made a dedication to Jehovah, which is something they do in prayer, will be listening to this talk or watching this talk, and after it, they will get baptized. It could be in a bath. It could be in a barrel. I've seen barrel baptisms. It could be in a lake or river, or even in the sea. As long as the entire body gets immersed in water, that will do. There's usually an observer who is an elder standing nearby to make sure that every millimeter of the body goes underneath the water, to make sure it's done properly, a proper baptism. And this talk is intended to be the welcoming talk for all of these new Jehovah's Witnesses who are embarking on spending the rest of their lives tethered to a cult, essentially. And I don't use that word lightly, cult. I think it's typically a problematic word to use when we're describing religious groups. Because what happens is when you use that word cult, you immediately put people's backs up. People who are in a cult never like to hear that they're in a cult. And when they hear that word, they close their ears and they don't want to hear any more. But that's what's just been described in what William Turner has been saying. He has literally been urging Jehovah's Witnesses, or new Jehovah's Witnesses, to change their personalities.
Like all of God's people, you've done, as verse 22 states, to put away the old personality. But there in verse 23, we must also continue to be made new in our dominant mental attitude. This involves our thoughts, what we allow our mind to dwell on.
And where is that in the Jehovah's Witness sales pitch? When Jehovah's Witnesses approach you, if you're watching this as a non-Jehovah's Witness, do they say, please join our group and become a different person? Jehovah's Witnesses watching this, do you ever say that to people? Are you ever upfront and candid and transparent when you are engaged in the preaching work? Do you walk up to people and say, great news, you can have peace in your life, you can have a relationship with God, it just involves you becoming a different person. It just involves you getting rid of your personality. But don't worry, you'll have a better one. If you're going to be honest with people, if you are going to dignify them and respect them, you should be upfront about that. If you're going to withhold that information, if you're going to be sneaky and only give them this information when they're on the cusp of baptism, that shows that you are deceiving them. You are manipulating them. And when someone gets manipulated into a religious group, you can be sure that it's a cult. I'm sorry, what other word do we use? And he also talked there about our thoughts and changing what we allow our mind to dwell on.
This involves our thoughts, what we allow our mind to dwell on.
How are you supposed to control what your mind dwells on? You know, your brain will just do its thing, quite frankly. Your brain is going to process the information it has received throughout your day and throughout your life, and it will spit out any number of thoughts. And if you're going to suggest that some thoughts shouldn't be dwelled on and that Jehovah's Witnesses need to control their thoughts in some way, what you're advocating for, as I've said many times, is the concept of thought crime. You're telling Jehovah's Witnesses that it's a crime, that it's wrong to have certain types of thoughts. Again, if you're a Jehovah's Witness watching this, please put the pieces of the jigsaw together, will you? You're not only being expected to lie to people or withhold information about the end game of a Bible study, which is to change someone's personality, you are also being told certain thoughts that flash up in your mind are wrong.